This push will cheer me ever, or deceit me now. I have lived long enough. My way of life is fallen into the sere, the yellow leaf. And that which should accompany old age as honor, love, obedience, troops of friends, I must not look to have. But in their stead curses, not loud but deep. Mouth honor, breath, which the poor heart would fain deny, and dare not. Satan!
What's your gracious pleasure?
What news more?
All is confirmed, my lord, which was reported.
I'll fight till from my bones my flesh be hacked. Give me my armor.
'Tis not needed yet.
I'll put it on. Send out mohoses, scur the country round, hang those that talk of fear. Give me mine armor. How does your patient, doctor?
Not so sick, my lord, as she is troubled with thick-coming fancies that keep her from her rest.
Cure her of that. Canst thou not minister to a mind diseased? Pluck from the memory a rooted sorrow? Raise out the written troubles of the brain, and with some sweet oblivious antidote, cleanse the stuffed bosom of that perilous stuff which weighs upon the heart?
Therein the patient must minister to himself.
Throw physic to the dogs. I'll none of it. Come, put mine armor on. Give me my staff. Satan, send out. Doctor, the thanes fly from me. Come, sir, dispatch. If thou couldst, doctor, cast the water of my land, find her disease, and purge it to a sound and pristine health, I would applaud thee to the very echo that should applaud again. Pull it off, I say. What rhubarb, cyme, or what purgative drug would scour these English hence? Hearest thou of them?
Aye, my good lord. Your royal preparation makes us hear something.
Bring it after me. I will not be afraid of death and bane, till Burnin Forest come to Dunsany.
Hello and welcome to Raise a Glass, the podcast where we talk about the stories and storytellers that shape us. I am Hunter Danson.
I am Eric Lintela.
And I am Michael Giordano.
Today is a first for us. We have a guest.
That was my own.
Yeah.
Drum roll.
This is my friend Michael, who I've known since high school, and we more recently reconnected and been talking about a lot of different things and doing music together and all kinds of stuff. But we're going to be talking about Macbeth by Shakespeare, because it is one of Michael's favorites, and I asked him if he wanted to come on, and he said yes. So here we are. But before we get to, before we get to that, I got to know what is in both of your glasses.
Yeah, I'll jump in first. Today, to celebrate the forthcoming Christmas season, beginning of Advent, the ending of Thanksgiving, and really the beauty of this time of year, I brought forth the most Christmassy of drinks, eggnog.
Hey!
I have come in the last few years to absolutely love eggnog. I grew up as a doubter, did not believe in it, and now I have experienced the magic of Christmas. It's probably the sixth food group that should have been added to Elf. That's what I got. Michael, how about you?
My receptacle for drinking, significantly, is my
Hey.
prized Scotland mug, suitable for this occasion.
Mm.
And my beverage is diluted elderberry syrup with just a dash of habanero sauce.
Mm.
Getting adventurous.
What
Fire,
is that?
burn, and cauldron bubble.
Yes, sir. Whew! A dash, indeed. A dash, indeed. Wow, it really burns.
Well, speaking
My
of
stomach
burning,
burns hearing that.
a little mixology going on over
Yeah.
here.
yeah,
And Hunter, what's in your glass?
I have some glue wine, which is a spiced wine that you warm up, and I have it in a mug here to keep warm.
Glue, like the thing that you.
Yeah. I think it's German. It's like GLUWHEIN, glue wine.
Okay, so it's not glue wine; it's glue wine, which
Glühwein,
is
yes.
a
Oh, I see.
spiced wine.
Yeah,
Yes.
So it's glue wine.
yeah, and it's not bad. From
I
brewed
see.
in Vermont, apparently this one.
So
But,
it's
Rude.
spiced wine, heat it up. Enjoy a warm. This one's pretty sweet, actually. Sweet
warm,
beverage.
sweet glue wine.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, before we get too far down a Wikipedia rabbit hole about Glühwein, we'll delve into our theme of this evening.
Yes.
Well, we actually have one other thing that we always do that I want to touch base on. We have to know what other people are raising a glass and pouring one out for from this previous week. I'll go first with this one, and we can kind of follow up around it. For me this week, I am raising a glass to Andor. And before anybody asks, yes, I'm talking about both Andors. The kingdom that the Trakand family, whom Morghese, Elaine, Gawain, Galad are part of in the Wheel of Time. And more specifically, for Andor, the Disney Plus TV show, Star Wars show, which in my opinion, I just finished today. It is by far the best Star Wars TV show I've seen. I have not seen all of the animated Clone Wars, so before you gotta attack me on that, I haven't seen them. But I got so many feels, and the action was good, and it was emotional, and just the acting was great. It was, whew. I'm hoping at some point we can talk about it. And then I'm pouring one out for sand. I don't like sand. That's continuing my Star Wars theme of my raising a glass and pouring one out.
Nice.
Well, enough said.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you have anything, Michael? You'd like to raise a glass or pour one out for?
I will certainly raise a glass to Kitchens of Vermont, which is a kitchen design store that just hired me to work for them.
Gotta love it. That's great. That's cool.
Thus providing me with the economic security I heretofore have lacked. So
Great
definitely good.
Heretofore.
Good looks, Kitchens of Vermont.
Yeah.
Keep doing you. And I will pour one out for the bus driver on the Manchester to Bennington Orange line. Because there's a bus driver who's semi-retiring, and then the people taking over for her are mid. And it's just You got to pour some out. It's an unfortunate situation for everyone involved.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Okay, Hunter, what about you?
I'm raising a glass to my son. He's 2.5, because he is the best audience for my lame magic tricks.
Are you better than Todd the Magician?
Oh, well, I'm definitely not.
You know Todd.
Oh yeah, Todd the Magician. I have like a couple kind of lame card tricks that I do, and he loves them. He's so great. I fold the card up in my hand and I pull it out of his ear, and he loves it. He's like, "To do it again, do it again," and it's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm pouring one out for the tiny little fuses in the plug of the Christmas lights that I had to change.
Oh my goodness! You
the
found
other
one.
day.
You were actually able to do it. I've tried so many times and failed. As soon as one light goes out, the whole thing's on. I'm like, I give up.
Yeah,
We're buying a new one.
It was actually the fuses in the plug of it on the end.
Oh yeah,
and you have to pull this little thing out.
Oh, that fuse.
Yeah.
Oh.
And you have to get out these tiny little fuses. They didn't look like they were broken, but it wasn't working. And I was like, I'll just change the fuses and see if it works. But I actually had to break them to get them out because they were in so tightly. And then I almost broke the new ones trying to get them in because they just made it incredibly tight. And the instructions were like, oh, just turn it over to get the old ones out. And I'm like, they're not falling out of there. They're squeezed so tightly. And it was, it's just one of those awful experiences that I'm sure many dads have encountered, trying to fix stuff around the house where it's like, really? They made it like this?
That's when it's worth buying a new one.
Yeah, but it works now. So
actually, one of my friends has his parents have a device that checks the current in each of the lights. So if you have an issue where one of the lights goes bad instead of the fuse at the end, like they have one that they can just like test it on each of the things real quickly and figure out where the problem is.
Oh, that's fancy.
That's the type of one of my same friend defines like being a homeowner and being a real adult as owning a bunch of things that are not necessary, like things that you only use once a year, like a gravy bowl. That makes you a real adult. If you have 2 sets of silverware, one of which you never use, or like an apple slicer that like goes over that you never use, that makes you a real adult. And as now as a real adult, I have a desire to own such a real adult tool as a Christmas light tester. Yes, I have a story related to Christmas lights testing. What a fascinating thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's riveting to everybody. But I interrupted you, Michael, a few minutes ago when you were actually going to lead us to the more interesting part of our discussion. And so I would love for you to kind of dive in and talk to us about Macbeth. What in the world is the story of Macbeth about, even? Can you give us a summary?
Well, Macbeth is the shortest of Shakespeare's 4 great tragedies as they are discussed in scholarship.
Okay.
And it is semi-historical, and it is inevitable that we will circle around to that point again, although I would like to not heavily focus on the historicity of the play. But it is a tragedy, and it discusses themes about the human lust for power. And as far as a summary goes, it takes place in Scotland, and there is a supernatural element where 3 very theatrically famous witches appear before our tragic hero, Macbeth.
The Weird Sisters.
The Weird Sisters. And they confound him with prophecies that he's actually about to take off. And his career is about to reach new heights.
Put your stock in this guy.
And these prophecies, and to some extent the urgings of Macbeth's wife, push him to accelerate his rise to the top.
Man was non-stop.
leading to the conflict and great tragedy that ensues for the next 4.5 acts.
Yeah.
So it's a political drama that has roots in 11th century Scotland. That is your setting. And I think there will come a time... there are themes that are linked to the story, and yet I think the story has so many layers and such depth that even if you yourself stand very little chance of becoming King of Scotland, you will still have a relatable theme, still a great lesson that can be transposed from Macbeth onto your own experience. And that is the beauty of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
You were kind of diving into it right from there, but I would love to hear. We're about the stories and storytellers that shape us, and so every episode, Hunter and or I kind of share about how this story has shaped us. And I'd love to hear how this story has shaped you. It seems like you were kind of about to go into that space.
Sure. I actually would love to kind of open up with that. So when I was a senior in high school, and you and Hunter were freshmen at...
The college which shall not be named.
Yes.
Yes, the college. I'm going to have to bleep it.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yes, please do that.
When I was a senior in high school, I had to record 32 community service hours, which is part of attaining a Regents diploma in New York State.
Mm-hmm.
And part of my community service was to work the box office at our local theater company in Cambridge, New York, the fabulous Hubbard Hall.
Yeah.
And the play that winter was Macbeth. So I saw it 4 times. And I had not read it. I had not seen it. I knew a fairly minimal amount about it. And I loved it immediately. And then later that year, I went to college myself, a college which shall even less be named. And at that college, I enrolled in a class called Shakespearean Adaptations. And the first half of the term, we discussed Othello. Then the second half of the term, we discussed Macbeth. So the year 2013, I took a deep dive into Macbeth. And then since then, it's sort of followed me. And I've seen it, I think, maybe 10 times, at least 8 times. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 12 times. And I've seen the Denzel Washington film that came out around this time last year, which I think is fabulous and which I recommend very highly. And I've seen just various stage productions and such. And it's become personal to me because it is a sort of a living word. It's the sort of thing where when you read it, a new phrase strikes you, and a new flourish of poetry rests on your mind, and you find new meaning in it. And for me, this time around, that line is Lady Macbeth in I believe it's in Act 1. And she says, she's talking to Macbeth, trying to persuade him to go through with the plan that they've made. And she says, "For that which thou esteemest the ornament of life," by which she means the crown. You know, that the crown is the ornament of life, the thing to have. It's what it's all about, is power represented by kingship of your native land, Scotland. And what's interesting about that is that there really is not a ton of indication that Macbeth esteems the ornament of life to be the crown.
Right.
There's a lot of indication that Lady Macbeth esteems the crown to be the ornament of life. We'll get into that. But yeah, the story's become personal to me by just repeated exposure, is the TLDR. And I'll as we go on, I'll talk more about how I relate to it personally.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Do you have anything you would like to share about the relationship you have with Macbeth, gentlemen?
Yeah, I read this play more recently, as I've been actually through a lot of our conversations. Michael, you often quote Shakespeare to me.
Yes.
And I kept thinking, man, that's a hole in my reading that I really need to shore up. So I started reading some Shakespeare, did King Lear, and I can't remember, but then I read Macbeth, and because I knew it was like one that was pretty important to you, and I really liked it. I don't know if it's my favorite Shakespeare, because I don't think I've read enough Shakespeare to say I have a favorite yet. But I mean, just the lines in it. Like I watched the Denzel version in preparing for the podcast, and I was doing some rereading today, and I was just writing down lines, and I think that is what I love about Shakespeare, is just the language and the way that he uses the English language to convey meaning, and the sound of the language, and not just alliteration and rhyming, but the fact that his alliteration and rhyming highlights the meaning of the sentence or the line, or it's just so well put together. And I mean, yeah, it's hard to get into if you haven't read much Shakespeare, but as you read more, you learn more of the language and the meaning, and it gets easier. Trying to find a line. I mean, this is just from 1-1, and it's not a particularly.
I was going to say that too. I was going to throw that one out there.
Yeah, and it's fair is foul and foul is fair. Hover through the fog in filthy air. The rhyming, the alliteration, it's just in 2 lines. He gives so much atmosphere and feeling, and I love it.
Especially the way that that's presented in the Denzel version, with that witch reading the voice, you know?
Oh yeah. The witch was, I don't know, the one who played the witch, did you see the Denzel one, Eric?
No. I bet you can tell me about it.
Yeah,
because I doubt too many of our listeners have seen it. So
yeah, it's really annoying. I don't think they've released it on DVD yet because it's only on Apple TV Plus.
Apple TV. Apple TV bought that.
When was the last time you went out and bought a DVD?
Well, I go to a library,
okay,
and rent the DVD.
That's good.
They get they get new DVDs. And
support your local library.
No, it's amazing.
Sewing machine from ours.
In this world where like all of these companies are fighting over our attention and trying to get us to pay for these cruddy streaming services, like just go to your library. And anyway,
that's what it's all about.
Preach.
Yeah. But the woman who played the witch,
best supporting actress.
Yeah, I mean, she outshined Denzel and
outshined everyone.
Frances McDormand. Like, yeah, just
you know what you have to do to outshine Frances McDormand?
Right. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And yeah, and just Shakespeare said it the best. You can tell I love Shakespeare a lot. I've come more recently to love Shakespeare because I didn't really appreciate it that much in high school. I think it's really hard to appreciate Shakespeare in high school, unless you have a particular interest. But just as a writer and someone who loves words, it's so fascinating to me to see the way that language has changed over time and to see it through the lens of a wordsmith like Shakespeare. But I think we're getting a little off track.
Well, I can help bring us back on track because let me tell you about my experience with Shakespeare and Macbeth.
Please do.
And my goal in this conversation is to learn why I should like Shakespeare. I don't dislike Shakespeare, and I understand the importance of what Shakespeare's done. And I have read, things from Romeo and Juliet to Macbeth. This is my third time working through Macbeth. I've done King Lear a couple of times. I've watched a lot of movies that were based off of various Shakespeare things. I've read a lot of the sonnets, Shakespeare's sonnets. I understand his way of crafting language and the impact that it has on lives and the way that he does pseudo history at times, and just like the beauty of the words. And I've also learned that to read Shakespeare without speaking out loud is to misread Shakespeare, I've found. So as I was trying to read through Macbeth again this time, whenever I tried to read it internally, I just missed so much and my eyes glazed over. But when I read things out loud to my son, who was somewhat interested, as most 7.5 months are, as he was trying to learn how to climb over my leg for the first time, he was somewhat successful, just for keeping track at home. To read it, reading it internally, just I glazed. I couldn't do it internally. But speaking it out loud, even just that line like that, that you just read, it wouldn't have. Reading it in your head, it doesn't connect the same way as to say the fair is foul and foul is fair. Hover through the fog and filthy air. Like there's the act of speaking it brings the words to life, and I understand that. And I've listened to audio versions of Shakespeare and like of King Lear a couple times, and I have also, and this is probably one of my favorite interactions with Shakespeare. Lived in Chicago for a few years, and up until the pandemic, there was a theater that was opened that did improv Shakespeare throughout the week. And so I went to multiple improv Shakespeare, and they'd take a line, and then they'd create a tragedy around the line. Like one of the first ones I ever went to was I met her on Tinder. And by the end of the show, the 2-act improv show, They had made it, led it to be two characters meeting each other while they're being burned at the stake on Tinder. Which just so I really appreciated that. I'm never gonna say that there's not a way that that Shakespeare has impacted our society, our culture, and probably even what I read and what I like. But I am not convinced that it is worth the effort to read a Shakespeare by yourself. I think maybe in a group of people where you can talk about it and read it out loud. But I need to be convinced why Macbeth is something that I tried. I made it halfway through it this time, and I just gave up. I couldn't. And it's, again, not because I don't respect Shakespeare. I went back through my notes and was like, okay, skip ahead. This is where Lady Macbeth's trying to wash her hands. Skip ahead a little bit more. Okay, this character dies. There's a ghost over here. Skip ahead a little bit. Oh, this person's now the king. That person was beheaded. Wow, there's a lot that I missed. But I was finding it difficult to dive into it, and maybe that's because as much as I talk about wanting to be a reader who reads things that show you the world instead of telling you the world, maybe sometimes I want to be told what's happening instead of just to see it in front of me. And whenever you're reading a play, it's you're reading something that's meant to be shown, and it's correct, and it's like in its pure medium. So that's my bit. I went on for a bit there. So
my uncle was an English teacher, and he would agree with you. He never taught plays as something to be read. And I agree with that philosophy, because while these were published, Shakespeare's plays were published and people were very interested in buying them, copies of the manuscript and such. They were interested in buying them because they had seen them.
Yeah.
And one thing that my edition of Macbeth here notes in several places in the various essays that precede the text is that Shakespeare wrote to an unprecedentedly wide audience. That at his time, London was a very up-and-coming city, if you can believe that, and that people of every walk of life lived there and wanted to see theater. And that is reflected in his work. The vast array of kinds of characters and stories that he tells in his 36 plays is a reflection of needing to appeal to a lot of people. And some of them had a lot of education and some of them didn't. So one of the notes talks about when Macbeth is washing his hands. And he says, "No, this my hand will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one red." So the note on that in the text is that he uses this mellifluous vocabulary, the multitudinous seas incarnadine, and then follows it in the next line with making the green one red. Partly because on a big stage, you might just miss the words. You might just not hear quite perfectly what's being said. Partly because a lot of people didn't know what multitudinous seas incarnadine, like, what are you talking about?
Is it a spice?
It means that when he's washing his hand off, he thinks that the multitudinous seas, all the water, all the oceans of the world, will turn red rather than cleanse the blood off of his hands, turning his skin clean.
Okay.
The blood is so horrific to him that it will poison an entire ocean and turn it red. So he kind of tells you that in simpler language after he flexes his poetic might.
Brilliant.
Another thing I wanted to point out. So one Shakespeare hack that I have that I've found very useful is it's proven now, and it's been proven for a long time. If you're asked to memorize something, a series of numbers or a series of words, your memory is most likely to remember the beginning and the end. That's the primacy and the final. I forget what the psychological terminology is. Shakespeare knew this. So Shakespeare, his first line, in many ways, is a hack. It's something you can dig into that will unlock a lot of meaning for you. Both of you mentioned you have read King Lear. The whole plot of King Lear is the ending is given away in the first line. And if you don't remember, I'll read it to you. This is Kent speaking. I thought the king had more affected the Duke of Albany than Cornwall. You get to the end of King Lear. Who's the one guy who's still alive? Albany. So he's telling you from the first line. And that, Richard III, now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by this son of York. He opens with his legendary strongest line in that play. So, what is Macbeth's first spoken line in the play? You heard Hunter read, fair is foul, and foul is fair. The first line you hear from Macbeth, he's walking along with Banquo, and he says, so foul and fair a day I have not seen.
Yeah.
And part of the brilliance to me of the sort of woven quality of the language in Shakespeare is so beautifully bringing together opposites. Foul and fair. And there's all these very elemental dichotomies like that. There's day and night and man and woman and things that are opposites that get brought together in some way or another. And that's like very Ecclesiastes. It's very Genesis. It's the Tao Te Ching. It's a very deep in ancient work and thought and literature.
My mind's like still processing everything you just said.
Yeah. One thing. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm still like getting over the idea of like I'm still like stage one of these were like, oh yeah, these were shows that were written down. I'm like, because in my mind I'm like, oh my goodness, like what if I like 100 years from now, 500 years from now, whatever, 450 years or whatever, we were talking about Wicked, having never seen it, or maybe seen a rendition, but like talking about it, and like not based off of the original book, but based off of the musical, and how void of life it would be in comparison to the musical, in comparison to the theater, the show that it is, right? When it's the amount of work, even just, I mean, you can hear it, Michael, in the way you speak, not only the love and passion for Shakespeare, but also your experience. I'm guessing you've done acting, just in the way that you spoke. And it brings the words to life in a different way, such that even if you don't understand them, you can see it and you can understand it. Not only in the choice of words, and you talked about that and how Shakespeare will use the like flexes his word muscles and then kind of say, red and green. But the way that it's acted also communicates that. There's so many different cues, that is in the show, that we have small amounts of them written on, I'm sure in our different versions. And yet like the way that it's lived and portrayed is so, I mean, visceral, that trying to read it, at 10 p.m. at night, where, while you're going to sleep, is really doing it a disservice. So that's where my mind's working through.
I think of Shakespeare, or reading Shakespeare for me has been like learning a language, because language never stops evolving. It's always changing. And the way that new languages are formed, and I'm basing this off of great courses, The Story of Human Language, a linguist who's a leader in his field does a bunch of lectures. You can get it on Audible. But he says the way that language changes is it goes through time. And if you have one people group who's speaking the language, and then you separate them and put them on different continents, they will eventually develop into totally different languages, from the same root. And there's a scale of that. And I love reading Shakespeare because I love seeing the way that the English language has changed, and just the meaning of words, just little things like, I think there's one I found in here that was, I think it's Macbeth. It's in 1-2, where he says like, I don't want to memorize another Golgotha.
Yes.
And memorize, we would say memorialize.
Right.
And it's so fascinating to me as someone who tries to chart the stormy seas of the English language. When I'm writing, and when you're trying to like mess with words, or doing poetry, or even just in prose, especially in fiction, trying to find a good sentence and stuff, it's so cool to see, like, to go deeper into thinking about a word like memorize. Because when we hear memorize, we think, okay, I got to remember that. But it's in here, it's memorialize. It's like make it memorable.
Make everyone else remember.
Yeah, the IZE, the I is it. Memorize. Yes. And I don't know. That's so cool for me to think about. And also, I also think about just the many, many things that we still say that Shakespeare said. I don't know. You might be able to help me out with this, Michael. But the be all and the end all. That is a phrase that is from Shakespeare. Actually from Macbeth. Yeah. Something wicked this way comes is also Macbeth.
By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this
right,
way
comes. Yes. Short shrift.
I love shrift.
Yeah.
Great word.
Yeah.
Everyone should be using that.
foregone conclusion. All that glitters isn't gold. Wild goose chase.
Now I feel like reading off a list. This is impressive.
I am. Yeah. Break the ice. I'm on Google. Yeah. Brave New World.
Brave New World. I just learned that today. That's a Shakespeareism. It's from The Tempest, I believe.
Yeah. You're right. Melted into thin air. Also from The Tempest.
I think Macbeth tops Melted into Thin Air, because when the witches disappear, Macbeth remarks, where did I write this down? And what seemed corporal melted as breath into the wind.
Yeah.
Melted as breath into the wind. Those witches were gone. They were nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
The earth has bubbles as the water has, and these are of them.
Oh yeah, I love that line.
Yeah. So, it's, I think, a good point to mention another historical note, since we're going to talk about Banquo at some point. As far as this play, there's a reason Shakespeare wrote this play in 1605, 1606, because, and not before then, because this is a play about Scottish rulers, one of whom is an ancestor of King James VI of Scotland. And when Queen Elizabeth died, she would not reveal who was going to be her successor. This is another drama, but she would not reveal who her successor would be, because she had no children, until her deathbed. And at her deathbed, she said, "My nephew James, King James VI of Scotland, he gets to inherit the English throne." So then, it's no longer the Queen's men, it's the King's men. And Elizabeth was Shakespeare's patron, now James is Shakespeare's patron. James, who's Scottish, whose ancestor is Banquo. And look at, Banquo, and how gentlemanly his character is, and how he's really done foul, and his son has to flee, and then several and you shall get kings though you be none. James, there was a clear political motive behind this play. And
fascinating.
So Banquo is gifted with I don't know if you want to, it's not apples to apples, but he's sort of the Horatio of this play. He is the insightful side character, although he meets a rather untimely fate. And he gets this line. Shakespeare's plays often include a line like this that explains the whole thing to you. And he's speaking about the prophecies, and he says, "And oftentimes, to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths. Win us with honest trifles, to betray us in deepest consequence." And that's the whole story. That's the whole story in 4 lines. The instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles. Hey, you'll be Thane of Cawdor. Oh, look, you're Thane of Cawdor.
Right.
It's already done before they even tell him. It's already been done. To betray us in deepest consequence. You're immune to men who are born of women. They just can't hurt you at all. Don't worry about them. Totally invincible you are. And in one of my scholarly essays in my copy here, they point out that when the battle is recounted, Macbeth, as he's fighting on the battlefield to reach MacDonald, the leader of the rebellion, he carved out a passage with his sword, which smoked with bloody execution. So he has to carve out a passage, and he's done in by this character who is from his mother's womb untimely ripped, whose very birth into this world is probably the result of knives and surgery. And there's that theme bookends the entire play. That this immense violence is just woven into these men's lives, and it's celebrated on the battlefield. But it becomes the field, but here shows much amiss. In other words, battle is all good on the field, but when you turn it in domestically, it's deplorable.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that while watching football the other day. As a lover of football, I love watching it, but I was like, and we wonder why there might be anger management problems. It's because you glorify, this type of intensity in one space, and then in all their spaces it's not allowed, which makes sense. Like I'm not going to propose a better answer at this particular moment, but it's the reality of what that looks like to the extreme is exactly what you're talking about, Michael.
Yeah, the gladiators. We who are about to die salute you.
Yeah.
Hunter, do you want to jump in with thoughts of yours?
I don't know.
I can keep going as long as you want.
I'm absorbing some thoughts. I want to get to more like the your story with Macbeth. Like how, because you said you come back to it. It's like a living word, which you get new things from it every time, and I was wondering, because you love Shakespeare, and you've read a lot of his, well, you've interacted with a lot of his plays and experienced them, and I'm wondering why this one in particular. I mean, you said it was by force. It came after you.
It has come after me. I mean, in my house,
it's like the Weird Sisters.
Yeah. It's karmic, and that's and that's the Weird Sisters are a peculiar kind of karma, but it involves some legerdemain. In my house, you're force-fed Hamlet at a young age. So I remember being 4 and 5 years old, and my grandfather repeating soliloquies and speeches from Hamlet to me. Speak the speech, I pray, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue, and do not mouth it, as many of your players do, or as Lief the town crier spoke my lines. I mean, I couldn't tell you. I've probably seen Hamlet as much as every other Shakespeare play combined. I've seen Hamlet a lot, and I'm very familiar with Hamlet. And Hamlet is revered as Shakespeare's sort of singular masterpiece in certain ways. Which is that's like saying that the singular masterpiece of Led Zeppelin is Stairway to Heaven. Yeah. I thought about that. The one quote that the average person might know from Macbeth is tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. That speech towards the end.
Right.
And that's a worthy line, to be sure. But if that's all you know of this play, it's like you've heard Piano Man without the rest of the incredible body of work that Billy Joel produced. You're just missing so much. If you think somebody's a one-hit wonder and they're actually not, you're missing out on a lot. So so Hamlet, I have that relationship with by birth, whereas Macbeth has been more of what I've lived my way into.
Mm.
And for me personally, there's a simplicity to the Faustian concept of Macbeth. It's
Could you define Faustian?
So the Faustian bargain is a work of literature called Dr. Faustus, and this man decides he's going to sell his soul to the devil.
He goes down to Georgia.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Quite right.
Obviously,
Plays the violin.
Yes. He sells his soul to the devil to be king of the world for a day.
Mm-hmm.
And Macbeth isn't that different of a story than that sentence I just told you. Macbeth sells his soul to the devil. Basically, that's he's tricked by these juggling fiends who palter with us in a double sense, who keep the word of promise to our ear and break it to our hope. He is susceptible, but through them and through his wife, who is, I would say, one of Shakespeare's stronger female characters, although there's room for more discussion about that. But his wife is Cersei Lannister, and he is Jaime Lannister, basically. Very loose comps, but they work. Actually, Cersei's pretty spot on. But anyway, so there's a simple Faustian quality to it. Like I said, you and I are very unlikely to become kings of Scotland. But what is...
Eric might, though.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Is he Scottish? Are you Scottish?
No, I lived there for a few months, but
But
Sorry.
what is it that thou esteemest the ornament of life? Is there something that you want so badly that you would actually lose your moral compass or lose sight of your real priorities and principles when that thing is set right before you? And that is a much more universal question than that is the universal that I find in the story.
That's such a good question. I let's just take a moment to think about that. I'm not expecting people to answer, but what is that single thing that you would lose your morals, as you said, to achieve, to have?
Everyone has a price, and it's lower than they think it is.
Well said.
Isn't that Lincoln?
It's Hunter Danson.
I'm getting it from somewhere else. But
I was always vexed in Game of Thrones. In the first season, Cersei says to, I think, Ned, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. And that's where the title Game of Thrones comes from, that line. And I was always vexed by that because you watch the show for 8 seasons and everyone is fighting for the Iron Throne. And who in their right mind would want it? Why would you want the Iron? It's an illusion of power, because as soon as you get it, everyone else is trying to kill you. So you're less safe once you have it than you are now. And the characters that do well are characters like Davos, who are just content to be who they are and stay out of the real line of fire as much as they can. Macbeth has a great life. He is a very successful general. He wins this battle. this is the kind of battle where once you've won it, you can probably just retire.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also, I mean, you discover this through his bloodline because he gets the crown, but he's basically a cousin of the king. So he's a nobleman himself.
And the
he's
king loves him.
He's a noble. The king loves him. The king promises to do good things for him. And the king is Shakespeare paints this as a good king, as distinct from Claudius or whoever. Like, Duncan is a good king, and that's why it's so evil for Macbeth to turn on him. But Macbeth there's no reason why he should esteem the crown the ornament of life. But is Lady Macbeth... I was originally thinking of asking this question on the pod, is Lady Macbeth Eve? And I very strongly feel that she's not, because she makes Eve look like the Virgin Mary. You know?
Yeah.
This is a very... This I think Cersei is a much better comp, although somewhat less biblical. That she is the real driving force that wants...
Anna Karenina.
Do you think she's Anna Karenina? A bear? Huh?
I think there's a comparison to be made, but I don't know. One of the things that I was thinking about a lot when I was watching, especially when I was watching the Denzel one and Frances McDormand, was how, Macbeth starts out as kind of reluctant to go through with it.
Yeah.
And she opens herself to the devil, basically.
She summons murthering ministers to invade her body and take her milk for gall and unsex me. Remove my womanhood, which is, as a concept, means remove all that is loving, gentle, merciful, compassionate, motherly, all those kinds of female traits. Remove all that so that nothing will distract me from killing the king and becoming the queen.
Yeah. And then Macbeth becomes, once he does it, he falls deeper into it, and eventually
he's ensnared.
He makes the decision to kill Macduff's wife and children. And Lady Macbeth has nothing to do with it. He calls her don't worry about it, young Chuck.
Be innocent of the knowledge, my dearest Chuck, till thou applauds the deed.
There it is. And
that's for Banquo. That's before.
That is for Banquo. Yeah.
For when he decides about Macduff, he says, he's angry because he's just gotten these visions from the second set of visions from the sisters. And he says, "This deed I'll do before the purpose cool. Before I stop and think about it, I'm going to make sure I wipe out all unfortunate souls who trace him in his line." He really, that to me, when I've seen this performed, I remember seeing it in Saratoga. They did Shakespeare in the Park there. And and also in the Denzel version with, Corey Hawking as Macduff and the Thane of Ross. And this is a dark drama that you watch with a gripping intensity. The one moment of poignant heartbreak is the moment when they tell Macduff, the moment when the messenger tells Macduff, your family is gone. There's nothing left. You ran away. Macduff shares a little bit of blame, and he knows that because he left his family in Scotland and ran away to England so that he could help raise an army to go take back Scotland. He knew when he did that that his family was at risk. So he feels responsible, but also, I mean, the pain
All my
of
little
that
chickens.
moment. Yeah, in one fell swoop. There's another one. Fell swoop.
Yeah.
Devastating.
When he says,
I wish you'd been teaching the courses I took where we read Macbeth and talked about it, because I did not get any of this out of those things. I mean, I read it in college and I read it in grad school. Right, like I spent hours of course time in my life reading and discussing this work and the tragedy that it is, and I feel like I'm gaining more from this conversation than I did from those many hours of hitting my head on a wall, trying to understand what was happening, and in trying to understand like what was happening, missing the entire reality of like the depth of it, like why. I was trying to focus on the surface level and then from there try to go into some of the deeper pieces of it. So that's the way I work through things. Like right here, you have done the surface level, the second step, the third step, fourth step. You're like fifth, 10th, some level of 100th step into this process, and you're like letting us like experience not just your love for Macbeth, but like what how Macbeth is used not only within the socio-political time it was written, but within the the larger questions it's asking. I was thinking about Ahab and Jezebel is really kind of what he's drawing from in Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. But like these
that's
deeper
good.
questions.
That's good. I hadn't thought of that. That's a good comparison. I mean, Shakespeare read the Bible. Like, I think humans are not machines. But if you bear with the analogy, if a person was a machine and you fed, like a paper shredder, only it took the shreds and recombined them into manuscripts. If that's what people were, and you took a machine like Shakespeare and you fed Virgil and Ovid and Seneca and Christopher Marlowe, and then all Greek myth,
Homer.
Roman myth, Homer, yeah, and the Bible. Like Genesis is everywhere in Shakespeare's work. And if you fed all that into one brilliant playwright, what would come out would be the works of Shakespeare.
Yeah. It's much better than the monkey illusion illustration. If you put an infinite number of monkeys in front of an infinite number of typewriters for an infinite amount of time, they'll eventually write the works of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Have you heard that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's true, but it's just like, if a tree falls in a forest, doesn't make a sound.
That's
like,
right.
It's like, who cares? That's a useless exercise.
Thank you.
It's basically what it comes down to.
So much of elementary school would have been, freed up time-wise.
Or the one where, they put a guy on a track. There's one person tied on a track, and on the other track, there's a whole bunch of people. And the train is going to hit all of the large amount of people. Do you flip the switch?
The trolley problem, they call it.
Yeah, I hate that. I hate it. It's like it's pointless.
Yeah,
unless you're watching Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, she solves it.
Oh, that's right.
They do a version of the trolley problem with the crossing guard, and she just has it go on straight, and she beats the robot, and
yeah, only Kimmy Schmidt.
Unbreakable.
Could have used her. She was in my philosophy class in freshman year.
What other questions does Macbeth raise in the themes that kind of make you think, Michael? Like what else? Like what other questions should we be leaving with that we read and digested or watched or listened to or experienced?
Questions that have shaped
that shape lives.
Yeah, shaped lives.
Well, there are mysteries that are, I think, to this day unsolved, that may never be solved. The word double appears over and over and over again in this text. You hear the witches, of course. That's the other famous line. Double, double, boil and bubble, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. But the word double appears so many times, I can hardly even note them all in my notes. And what is that about? And it starts early. It's when the battle's lost and won. It's like a double saying. But even when they're describing the battle, they say, when the Norwegian, the revolt it's a Scottish rebellion, but they're aided by Irish and Norwegian troops. Norwegian, that's what they would say at the time.
Yeah.
So the Norwegians have a second wave of troops, and Macbeth and Banquo doubly redoubled strokes upon the foe, and just like we're not fazed by that. Just continued to smoke everyone in sight.
Killing spree.
Yeah, and just a number of times the word double appears, so that's something to ponder. I mean, there's just so much going on here. I think definitely the Porter's speech is something that mystifies me, and what I read today is that the Porter, because there are no accidents. Like, there's the other line that I can't get through this podcast without recounting.
Yes, please.
They talk about the Thane of Cawdor, and how when he's killed, when he's executed for treason, that nothing in his life became him like the leaving of it.
Oh, that was such a crazy moment. Sorry, please continue.
He died as one who had studied in his death to throw away the dearest thing he owed as were a careless trifle. And that is the flip side of the Faustian bargain. The dearest thing you owe, your honor, your soul, your moral compass, the respect that others have for you, your conscience, sleep. Macbeth shall sleep no more. He's unable to sleep because his conscience is destroyed by what he's done. And yet, once it's destroyed, he can only go further down that path. He kills Banquo. He tries to kill Fleance, a little boy, and then he kills Macduff's family, and he just circles the drain. He's more and more bloody. So that's the flip side, and I don't think it's at all a coincidence that that Shakespeare uses the same word when Banquo says that the instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles, and betray us in deepest consequence. And then you turn around later, and he throws away the dearest thing he owes as were a careless trifle. And then the one other thing, I guess, on the political level of the play, and this is something that you'll notice they elide from the Denzel and Frances McDormand Macbeth. But there's this peculiar moment where Malcolm starts to speak as if he is. They ask, he says, if we get rid of Macbeth, someone even worse will take the throne. And I forget who he's talking. I think he's talking to Macduff, actually. But Macduff says, well, who do you mean? He says, it is myself I mean, in whom I know the particulars of vice so grafted, that when they shall be oped, black Macbeth shall seem as white as snow. So that line speaks to me very deeply. That line speaks to me so deeply, and I think it speaks to everyone. Like, who knows your particulars of vice better than yourself?
There's oops, sorry, you continue.
And so, yeah, just to complete that thought. So then he proceeds to say, well, if I had power, I would want everyone's wives and daughters to myself. I would want sexual gratification through all kinds of available women. And that would be awful, right? And, oh, no, you're the king. It's all right. Then he says, I would be lustful for power, and I would seize all the lands and all the wealth in the kingdom if I had the power of the throne. Oh, well, da 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 da. Well, if I was the king, I would want to make war against everybody, and my lavish, violent spirit could not be curbed. And then, again, I think it's Macduff he's talking to, and he says, oh, heaven help us, if you're really as bad as you say you are. And then Malcolm kind of, in a peculiar way, he's like, I take it all back. I didn't mean that. And then the end of the play, Malcolm becomes the king. Yeah. So I think while Shakespeare has to walk this line where King James is the king, monarchy is still a thing, and Shakespeare is never able to fully reject monarchy as a concept in his work, as if that were something we don't know if that's something he would have wanted to do, but he raises this question of, can anybody be trusted with power, like the kind of power a king has?
Yeah. That's so important. I've been wondering that lately as we, midterms just came up and everything. Yeah. And that's one of those things that growing up, everybody wants to be the president. And yeah, I definitely at times, probably as a third grader, was like, yeah, I want to be the president. And as I've learned more about myself and our political system and so on and so forth, I'm like, that seems like the worst job ever. I would no. It almost feels like the type of job that the person that should have that role, and it doesn't mean just the U.S. president, any of these types of authority spaces, should be the person that's actively choosing not to have it.
Yeah.
And in reality, and because of that level of humility and that's necessary when you all of a sudden hold power. There's a statement that I'm sure you both have heard before in response to a news clipping in early 1900s with the question, what's wrong with the world? There's a story of G.K. Chesterton responding, Dear Sir, regarding your question of what's wrong with the world, I am. And to me, that's a piece that I think of Paul. Paul writes about that all the time. It's the very things I don't want to do, I do. And he tells his own story and all these pieces. What a impactful question and line. And the reality of being able to say it out loud.
Yeah.
One of the other questions that I've wondered when I've read Macbeth, and I'm going to ask this because I don't know if it's a question I should be asking, as in stop asking that. Macbeth's not about that. Is this question of fulfillment of prophecy?
Oh yeah,
and I feel like maybe that's one that people talk about way too much. Maybe, I don't know, but this idea of what if Macbeth had heard the prophecy but chose not to make it happen? Would it have happened still?
If chance will have me king, why chance may crown me without my stir. So he thinks of that. He even thinks of that himself, but he still can't resist what he winds up doing.
Yeah.
Do you think that he would have done any of this had the prophecy of the Weird Sisters not happened? Would he have like tried to kill everybody and become king?
Well, I mean,
do we have evidence? I guess is the question. Is there something that speaks to that?
It seems like no, but with the caveat that who are the Weird Sisters?
Yeah,
you know, who is the devil? Who is Lady Macbeth? Even like she's him. These are, you know, especially in sort of mythical work, things like demons are sort of external representations of your own. It's part of your psyche, you know. These are forces within your own psyche. Like, so we see on stage three witches come along and tell Macbeth, wow, if you're Thane of Cawdor, you're going to be Thane of Cawdor, and then he becomes Thane of Cawdor. But like, you're next in line for the throne, and the king is coming to stay at your house. Huh? You know?
Nudge.
So like, and interestingly, the house that the king is staying at is Cawdor. It's not Glom's. So the last question to wonder about Macbeth is, what happened to the Thane of Cawdor? Did the Thane of Cawdor run into three weird sisters that tempted him into becoming a traitor and brought him to his ruin? Is there something endemic to the castle, Macbeth's, not Glom's, but specifically the Cawdor Castle? I forget the name of it. I wrote it down somewhere. But is there a sort of a haunted association with that place? But what are these forces that compel people to forego their honor, their devotion to the king? I mean, Macbeth was just fighting a battle for the king, and he turns around and kills him. And the king is so grateful. The first thing, we're talking about first lines, the first thing the king says when he sees Macbeth, the first line they speak to each other is, the king says, "O worthiest cousin, the sin of my ingratitude, even now, was heavy on me." Now that's hyperbole from the king, saying like, the sin of my, he's speaking hyperbolically, but like, I don't know how to tell you how grateful I am. You know, there's no way to even tell you. But the irony of that statement, the sin of Macbeth's ingratitude, will weigh on heavy on him for the rest of the play.
I mean, even the moment where the king's response of saying, hey, I got this diamond necklace for Lady Macbeth, like that was a piece that stuck out to me as well. Like the purity of that, followed by the blood.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
yeah, he was giving gifts to everyone in the whole mansion, all the servants and everything, even just distributing gifts to everyone. And yet, you know, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. Hunter, do you have closing remarks?
I have closing lines from Shakespeare.
Bring them to us.
Is this a dagger which I see before me, the handle toward my hand? Come, let me clutch thee. I have thee not, and yet I see thee still. Art thou not, fatal vision, sensible, to feeling as to sight? Or art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation, proceeding from the heat-oppressed brain? I see thee yet in form as palpable as this which now I draw. Thou marshalest me the way that I was going, and such an instrument I was to use. Mine eyes are made the fools of the other senses, or else worth all the rest. I see thee still, and on thy blade in dungeon gouts of blood, which was not so before. There's no such thing. It is the bloody business which informs thus to mine eyes. Now o'er the one half-world nature seems dead, and wicked dreams abuse the curtained sleep. Witchcraft celebrates pale Hecate's offerings, and withered murder, alarumed by his sentinel, the wolf, whose howls his watch, thus with his stealthy pace, with Tarquin's ravishing strides, towards his design moves like a ghost. Thou sure and firm set earth, hear not my steps, which way they walk, for fear thy very stones prate of my whereabout, and take the present horror from the time which now suits with it. Whiles I threat, he lives. Words to the heat of deeds too cold breath gives. And earlier on, one of the lines was, present fears are less than horrible imaginings.
Yes. Nothing is but what is not. Later in that passage. And I since we're doing this real quick, Macbeth, when they've discovered the body of the king, and I love Denzel delivering this. Had I but died an hour before this chance, I had lived a blessed time. For from this instant there's nothing serious in mortality. All is but toys, renown and grace is dead. The wine of life is drawn, and the mere lees is left this vault to brag of. Lees meaning like the dregs, the bottom of the barrel of wine.
Yeah.
There's nothing good left.
Be careful, we could just read the whole play. At least I could. But
You didn't? I thought that you did read the whole one.
Yeah, I was only going to do part of it, and then I just couldn't stop.
I kind of zoned, which maybe is embarrassing. I don't know if I should be embarrassed about that, but it was very calming to listen to, even as you're talking about very intense things.
False face must hide what the false heart doth know, Eric. Even that, as a super last postscript, this is something that one of the actors told me. Actually, it wasn't an act. I met Lady Macbeth, the actress that played Lady Macbeth. I got to hang out with them at an actor's party, and I think her boyfriend told me this, that the way Shakespeare wants the play to be acted, he writes it into the play so that it can't get lost. So when Lady Macbeth says, "Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it." So Lady Macbeth says that to Macbeth, advising him how to treat the king, who, how to basically be fake with him and treat him as if he's a welcome guest, but be this cunning serpent under it, like you're gonna kill him.
Yeah.
But also, that's the character Lady Macbeth. That's how she is and how she should be played. Shakespeare's like coding that right into the script.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we finish up then?
Yeah.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a joy. I know that I have learned a ton and really enjoyed hearing your thoughts. I know we've talked a couple times, but I feel like I'm getting to, hear you speak about something that you're very passionate about and know a lot about and have thought a lot about. And that's what this podcast is about. And thank you for bringing that. Thank you for being honest. Thanks for kind of helping us experience Macbeth in a way that I know I haven't before, even though I've been in spaces where I would assume I would have. And I'm so appreciative. Andrew, do you want to say anything just to thank Michael as well?
Yeah. Just I was really excited for this podcast because I enjoy a lot of our conversations, especially when there's not many people I talk to who quote Shakespeare to me, and I love it. And you have so much. So you've lived Shakespeare and especially Macbeth, and it was really great to live it with you for an hour and so many minutes.
The service and the loyalty I owe in doing it pays itself.
No, it's just
the honor. The honor is mine, gentlemen. Thank you for receiving me.
Yeah,
I feel I'm a much more welcome guest than unfortunate Duncan.
That's good. That's good.